Hey guys, it's Mystical Storms here. This is chapter 4, the heroes, villains, and everything in between. This is like the third part I'm reading on a same night because I just want to keep reading this fanfic because I like it, because I haven't read it yet. I usually read new fanfics, like I record them, and if it's something that I just really don't like, or something that just doesn't seem as, good for Podfic, I usually don't post it. But this one I really like, and I just keep reading it and recording it out loud. So they might come out a bit closer to each other, so you guys don't have to worry too much about them being very far apart. Anyway, let's get started. Oi, nerd. Bucko stood up, walking to the shitty nerd's desk, watching him flinch briefly, but something seemed so fake, it angered Bakugo. How dare he pretend to be afraid of him? Try and make it seem like Bakugo was still above him when they both knew it was nothing but that. It had been a revelation to know Deku wasn't afraid of him, not anymore. That is, Deku hadn't exactly said it, but his tone and look gave Bakugo enough of an impression to know that the little shit had been pretending all this time. How long had it been since the last time Deku flinched for real? Last time he didn't look down at Bakugo now that he had all that little shit. But then again, Auntie Inko was gone. Perhaps since then Izuku changed. Apparent to him even then, but why did he care? Bakugo didn't care about a stupid Deku. Whatever he was thinking about Bakugo. Though that was a lie. Bakugo always cared, and it irked him on how he never shut his mind off the nerd. Irked him how he could never shut his mind off the nerd. What is it, Kachan? Deku looked at him, shrinking on himself. It just irked Bakugo even more. He scoffed. Quit pretending, he snarled as Deku jumped again. Oh, God. He's such a bad actor. It's obvious that he wasn't influenced by Bakugo's tone of voice. Like, not at all. Though Bakugo had never noticed he was pretending before, so it was only obvious because Bakugo knew. He clicked his thumb, kicking Deku's desk. Deku squeaked as his book fell down, his eye never meeting Bakugo. Come with me, we need to talk. He kicked Deku's desk again for good measure, not liking the taste of bile in the back of his throat. Whatever. Gonna beat me up? Izuku asked quietly, but Bakugo still caught him. He caught it. Deku got out of his seat, the squeak of his chair grabbing his attention, people staring about them as they near the door, whispers overtake the classroom. Bakugo paid them no mind. Oh, Bakugo gonna go beat up the nerd? Let me come with you. An extra neared them, as a big-ass smile on his face. Bakugo glanced at him, narrowing his eyes. Shut up, it's none of your business. Fine. Don't be such a pain in the ass, Katsuki. You heard Deku suppress a snort into his hands as he passed Bakugo and slipped out of class, giving him a side eye that was anything but warm. No usual spark of stupid naivety behind his gaze. Bakugo glared at him. What the fuck had happened to him? He followed Deku, who led them to a secluded area where no one walked around. Bakugo only knew that because the extra light to corner Deku here to beat him up. Talk. Deku leaned against the wall, staring Bakugo down. Bakugo watched him adjust his uniform, brushing some dirt off. Was that ash on the side? He glanced at Deku's face to find him staring. The gaze still cold. He huffed and leaned against the wall opposite of him. What the fuck did you mean by you took my advice? Bakugo watched Deku flinch, this time for real. Had he caught him lying? Was he only pretending? Kachan, he sighed. You're smart, right? Use your fucking brain. He snarled instead, his tone so angry and very unlike the stuttering mess Deku usually was. All this time, he had been playing a character to appease others, to appease him. Why the fuck? Why couldn't the nurse stand up for himself and not let others beat him up? He couldn't grasp it. Was Deku really just stupid? Just fucking tell me, nerd, don't play games. He grinned out, but Deku yelled back at him, his fist clenched to his side. Oh, right, because suicide baiting for you is a game. Sorry, I forgot, but newsflash, we're not on the same page, Katsuki. Deku threw his name at him like a stone. It had been so long since he had been called by his first name. It was always Kachan this, Kachan that, the stupid nickname that Deku never had shaken off. Apparently, he didn't like it either, but how easily he threw that away as he shoved his real self. What the fuck, Deku? Are you stupid? He yelled at him instead, his mind now wrapping around the concept that Deku might have done something he told the boy to do. He knew he was shitty about it, but come on. He'd been like this for years. Why did the nurse suddenly start listening to him? He was smart in that. No, I'm just tired. If someone tells me to jump, trust me, I'm so done and I fucking will. And I did. Deku growled at him, turning away from him, starting to walk away. Oko opened his mouth, trying to tell him to stop and face him, but nothing came out as Deku stopped him, briefly turning his head. Don't talk to me anymore if you know what's good for you, Bakugo. Bakugo punched a wall behind him. Deku was a fucking idiot. Aizawa surveyed the area before moving across the rooftop. It was well into the night and his patrol would be coming to an end soon, but the night was pleasant, so he let himself linger outside just for a little longer. He kept his eyes sharp and trained on the rooftops, his mind reminded of that one problem child who played with death like nothing. Izuku was interesting, that was for sure. He seemed bright and had enough sarcasm to fill a whole town, but he had this sadness around him Aizawa hated to see. It should never follow a child. He had an inkling that Izuku's home life or perhaps school life wasn't the best for him. In any case, he never received much love or reassurance from the look of it. Unless he was completely wrong, Izuku was simply a little shit who liked irritating adults. Wouldn't that be a first kid he'd met? Wouldn't be the first kid he met like that. Izuku reminded him of Yami in some ways. At least the sarcasm was something he shared. Briefly wondered if they ever happened to meet on the streets, though Izuku wasn't irresponsible enough to meet with villains. Even if Yami wasn't exactly a villain, he was still towing the line between good and bad, but he was still dangerous to a degree. Though, he wouldn't put it past Izuku to do something stupid. Nonetheless, after their last meeting, it was clear that his friend, even if they were friends, was lying trying to cover it up. But the laughter he heard after he left was genuine enough for him to leave it alone for now. Yami was his priority, even though Izuku sat in front of his mind every day. The kid really made him watch the city roofs much closer than before. The reason why he paused seeing a figure sitting on the edge of the roof, squinting his eyes, watching the person shift, kicking his legs out like some kid. He crept closer to the rooftop, hoping that it wasn't Izuku again, yet he doubted the kid would listen to him and not repeat his adventure. He came closer, the kid shifting again, stopped swinging his legs. Eraserhead, Aizawa stopped. Yami? Problem child? The nickname rolled off his tongue as he watched as Yami let out a confused sound, turning around, his eyes squinted. Problem child, really? That's the nickname I've gotten? Yami shifted his familiar red eyes, glittering in the moonlight. He was wearing a gray hoodie for a change, but had his usual mask on his face. Aizawa nodded, watching as Yami shook his head, grumbling under his breath. Just call me Yami. Problem child makes me sound silly. He chuckled as Aizawa watched him carefully. If the kid leapt, he would be ready to catch him, but Yami gave no signs of leaning too far to actually fall off, at least for now. What's with this kid in rooftops? Seriously. He could never be too careful. Aizawa watched him turn back and sit still, every now and then fingers twitching as if writing something down. So what are you doing here, Eraser? Isn't your shift over already? He broke the silence, not turning to him. Aizawa noted that he should be back by now. Hisashi would be worried about him soon. You know my patrol hours? He watched the kid shift, standing up and tottering over to him, keeping his distance. Of course I know them. I have every route and every patrol hour of every hero Mustafa right here. He tapped his head. You'd think I would be able to run around for so long freely without knowing when and where the heroes moved? I thought humped. Yami was logical. If you say impressive, my opinion, you will drop a razor. If you say impressive, my opinion on you will drop Eraserhead, because that's just common sense. Yagi turned his back to return, staring off the building. The kid was definitely weird. If you had enough common sense, you wouldn't be running around. Aizawa took a deep breath. Even if the kid was logical and thinking about his safety, it still didn't change the fact that he was just a teenager running around, and he should stop before he takes one wrong move and get himself killed. Vigilantism was a slippery slope of doing too little to get noticed or doing too much to get picked up in a few weeks with no whispers on how a body was found near an outskirt of a city. Funny, he mumbled, giving Aizawa a look that didn't belong on the face on a supposedly 13-year-old. Tsukauchi proposed, floated back, and he pinched the bridge of his nose, cursing at the detective because he was absolutely about to do it. Great. What are you doing here, kid? Planning? Aizawa raised an eyebrow as Yami flicked his finger and gestured to come closer. He eyed him, but shuffled closer, peering over the building where Yami pointed. He could only trust his problem child not to push him off. See that man over there? Aizawa followed Yami's point. He's been standing there for the last 30 minutes waiting. I'm sure he's supposed to be I'm sure it's supposed to be a meeting in around 10 to 15 minutes. Aizawa watched the man shift foot to foot, clearly nervous as he looked around for something rather than someone. Yami continued to his left. Not sure if just an information exchange or something more, but the guys from a newly established gang who just started drug dealing are making rounds in the underground. Lately the gangs has had problems with supply, which makes me think they're in disagreement between operation parties. So I'm watching to gather information for now. The kid finishes, glancing at Aizawa briefly before locking his eyes on the tug once again, his gaze unwavering and focused. That was simply speaking good. The kid knew what he was talking about, or rather gather enough information to know his analytical skills shining through. Aizawa knew the brat had given many gangs a run for their money, but he knew why and how he would know the information to tip the police. But here it was. Simple observation. What drugs are they spreading? He inquired. Time to see if he knew more stuff than the basic underground. It was important to know the nuisance of operation given the information. No information was useless if one didn't know how to put it together. Trigger, nasty stuff. I'm sure you know. Aizawa nodded. Trigger was one of the most well-known pieces of work imported from the States. Illegal in Japan, but demand was high enough for people to risk 15 years of prison just for a taste. It's pretty common in the past few years, he said as Yami let out the noise of agreement. Yeah, but that's the thing. They're dealing trigger, but the dose is twice as strong as previous ones, which leads me to believe that either new generations come to trigger is unable to give the same effect because of the genetic shift, or they're not actually operating with trigger and they're just lying to everyone's face, and that's why there's a problem recently. Aizawa raised his eyebrow at the kid, who just shrugged. Who could do magnificently as a detective. You think it's the latter? Yami nodded slightly. No matter how much I love Quirk singularity theory, that I'm pretty sure it's 99.9% true in the case, it's the latter. His voice only betrays the slightest hint of disappointment. Aizawa wondered just how much the kid knew, how much he analyzed to easily piece together given information. To build on his own ideas without the need to outsource opinions. Did he have a quirk for that? One that wasn't officially on his records as Akatani Mikumo? Did he have help or a supplier for any of this? From past experience, he knew Yami was seen with Dabi every now and then, but Dabi wasn't known for the FAD operation. Yami, on the other hand, seldom showed up on the radars except for when he tipped the police. It's only silly things with Dabi that put him on there with for the police to take notice of. But then again, they never truly know what he truly did and how much he let the police know. But how smart he might deliberately keeping himself off the radar. What are you doing? What are you going to do with the information you gather tonight? Yami looked at him, the corner of his eyes crinking as if he was smiling. Maybe he was amused at the question. Compile it, of course, with everything else that I have on the gang and their suppliers. They are depleting the market and the main customers. If I gather enough information tonight, I might have enough to take down the whole gang supply system of Trigger for a few months at least. I handed over to the police, as I always do. Pretty sure you've heard about this anyway, Eraserhead. That's true, but how close he worked with the local police station, Tsukauchi? He often heard of the kid's tips. More often not, the hero on the scene to help and catch Yami watching the police on their work. Though he never gave Aizawa enough time to catch him, except for the time not too long ago, which Aizawa knew wasn't planned at all. Kid. He looked at Yami, who stared at him, kicking his legs out again. Yeah. Aizawa felt his tongue tied, and he had many questions. Why was he doing this? Why was he running away pretending to be a hero when it's easier and simpler than running around pretending to be a hero when it's easier, simpler than that? Hero schools exist for a reason. He was simply too impatient for that. Was it because he was recorded dead and just couldn't do it? He had the potential to be a hero, potential to be someone great on the scene, but somehow Aizawa felt that saying that to the kid would piss him off, so he held back. If not, it was no use pissing off someone who could so easily cause havoc. Tell me more. He said instead, shooting off Tetsuzashi, turning his full attention to the kid. Sure. His tone light and fairly familiar. By the way, Eraserhead. Yami rubbed his hand nervously. What is it? He grunted. Why aren't you, I don't know, arresting me? He asked, and Aizawa stared at him for a moment because right in front of him was technically a citizen breaking the law, someone who should at least be brought in for questioning because no matter how innocent observing for the sake of information may seem, how burning down warehouses was just playing around, it didn't mean that what he did was entirely legal. He knew what method the kids used to gather his information and what the purpose of destroyed warehouse was. And yet Aizawa was a man on a mission, quite literally, and dealing with the kid, sometimes the most simple approach was hearing them out. Kids wanted to be heard. That was one of the main reasons many of them went on and broke the law, fed up with staying back and being shut down by adults. by the adults. He didn't know Yami, and wasn't and what he was capable of, but he needed the kid to trust him. Are you doing anything bad besides being outside way later than kids your age should be? I guess not. He shrugged, still, still clearly nervous, but more relaxed than before. If he had been expecting Aizawa to capture him right now, then and there Izuku flashed in his mind, shoulders hunched down, and no exceptions of people around him to notice him. What has the world done to to the children? Good. Now tell me more about the suppliers. He changed the subject as Yami relaxed even more, pulling a notebook out, his hands trembling only slightly. Right. It was a start. The kid's damn smart. Aizawa slapped a thick wad of paper on Tsukauchi's desk, startling him. It seemed awfully familiar to their conversations not so long ago. It had been only 2 days since he met Yami on the roof, but he still hadn't come to terms with how unique the boy was. He was damn smart for sure. Nizu would have a field day if he ever got to talk to the kid. What? He glanced up at the pile up at Aizawa. Tsukauchi looked like he hadn't slept for the last 3 days, which highly possible, and Aizawa could relate to that wholeheartedly. Not that Tsukauchi went out on night patrols like he did, but investigations sometimes were so complex and demanding that Tsukauchi slept at the police station, or rather didn't sleep at all. Here's everything he compiled about the gang dealing with triggers, suppliers, operations, customers, and everything. Tsukauchi looked through the papers, shifting and tapping his desk. He grew more restless as he looked through the stack. Aizawa briefly spied on Tsukauchi's computer that he'd been looking into them. Talk about timing. Who? Aizawa watched the man frantically search through the stack, writing down a few notes here and there. Problem child. Better known as Yami. He apparently doesn't appreciate your nickname. He noted that they should look up Yami whenever the name was more known in the underground. Shit, Aizawa. It's everything we didn't have. Shit, Aizawa. It's everything we didn't have to apprehend the gang. Tsukauchi sighed, rubbing his forehead. The problem child either knew what the police were working on, or this was purely a coincidence, which Aizawa didn't believe much. Someone like Yami wouldn't hope for a coincidence. Right. Tsukauchi searched for his phone, his hands shaking. He reported to the higher-ups, and as soon a mission was being drafted. Eraserhead knew he'd be there as well. The kid just gave them more work. Aizawa didn't have time to look through the stack of papers spread in front of them. He took a long glance before he was on his way to Tsukauchi, because this was insane. Despite the mountain of information he'd been who'd given him on the roof was so much more. Yami on the roof told about possibilities, probabilities, and what would or could happen. But these were facts, information compiled so perfectly that it looked all too perfect, if not source confirmation confirming this left and right. Everything was down to the last detail. And if something was uncertain, an analysis followed that, speculations on the missing information. For a kid his age, for a kid running around playing hero and villain, as Aizawa had believed, this was beyond what he expected. He never doubted Yami to be smart. That was foolish. No kid his age would be able to do what he had done for almost 2 years, and yet small tips left to the police were nothing compared to this. Tsukauchi seemed to agree. Usually he lives an anonymous tip that are barely a sentence. Never does. He tapped his finger on the table again before looking through the paper once more, and his eye catches the new information each time. Aizawa looked through the analysis parts of the whole report. It could be considered a report on how official and detailed it was. The kid would be making bad mad bills if he worked for the force officially. That's because he gave it to me personally. He grunted, startling Tsukauchi again. You met him again? Aizawa nodded his head. After their talk on the roof, Yami told him to come to the same roof in 2 days. He did and found this, but the boy was nowhere to be seen. 2 nights ago, I found him on the roof, apparently gathering information. He was glad he decided to stay longer that night. Hisashi wasn't happy, that was for sure, but once he explained the mission he had, Hisashi almost pushed him out of the apartment to bring the kid home. No matter how ridiculous it sounded, he was inclined to do that for a few brief moments when he met Yami. I see. Tsukauchi hummed before smiling, more like grinning at him. What about making friends with the kid? Working on it. Aizawa grit out, the eyes snapping to the phone buzzing on Tsukauchi's desk. He watched Tsukauchi put it on silence, his grin widening. Oh, tone down your enthusiasm, Aizawa. Don't patronize me. Sorry. It's simply funny how you try to convince me you don't have a soft spot for the kid. Trust me, Yamada has given me enough material to think otherwise. Aizawa grumbled, hiding behind his capture weapon. He didn't otherwise show it, but he did have a soft spot for the kid. Or, as Hisashi said, for troublesome children, because all he ever did was complain about them, which in this case was an act of love. I'm sure your husband takes every opportunity to humiliate you. Tsukauchi laughed, finally grabbing his phone. Oh, don't say that. Wait. I'm sure my husband takes every opportunity to humiliate me. Tsukauchi laughed, finally grabbing his phone. Don't say that, Aizawa. I'm sure he only wants to humiliate you just a little bit. Aizawa raised his eyebrow at the detective. Detective, I suggest you choose your next words carefully. Coffee. Tsukauchi pointed to the pot of coffee at the back of the room, answering his phone. Actually, can you check something for me? You were sure this isn't a scam? You sure this isn't a scam, Dabi? Izuku looked around, unsure if he could trust Dabi with this. Wouldn't be the first time we knowingly led them into a trap. Dabi was smart and perceptive, but sometimes a little dumb, and that sometimes led them to life-threatening situations. Can you not question me every 5 minutes we do this? Dabi grunted from his side. It's my job to question people. Izuku grinned at him, though the mask obscured the view, so he was sure Dabi saw his stupid grin anyway. Your job is to stop being annoying and trust me, Ami. Dabi reached out and pulled the hood over his face. Izuku stumbled, yanking it back and adjusting it properly over his head. I don't know, Izuku sighed. The last time you told me someone was asking for me because of a potential job, we were running 2 miles to get away from some thugs. It had been mere 2 months ago. Dabi had heard some people were asking for his service as Yami. Of course, Dabi had convinced them to check out. Only the moment they set foot into the alley, both escapes were blocked by big ass thugs who, stereotypical muscular guys who look like they drink every day. So to say, Izuku got the cardio he needed that day. God, things there was a big fight nearby. Thank God there was a fight nearby that gathered heroes from around the area, and they could just slip away as the gang kept away, smart enough not to raise commotion or attract the heroes. It was a poorly made decision. Dabi clicked his tongue. Your life is a poorly made decision. Shut up, Dabi tried to pull his hood again, but Izuku escaped his grasp and jogged ahead of him, looking around once more. The warehouse was big but awfully empty, beside a few lone crates. Despite that, echoes did seem to go far in this place, which set Izuku on edge. He didn't like open spaces where he had nowhere to hide or escape. He may have a quirk that doesn't let him die, but realistically, he'd rather avoid being captured, tortured, or whatever else it came with. He looked at Dabi, who seemed really relaxed, so he decided to trust him. What's this place? I thought you knew everything, Yami. Your reputation's crumbling. Dabi teased, and Izuku pouted. Dabi, if you think I know every warehouse in the country, then you're gravely mistaken. But you should. A voice spoke, and startling. He whirled around, holding a knife, eyes narrowing at a newcomer, a man dressed in a simple suit and a cigarette in his mouth. Who are you? He raised his eyebrow and a smile never leaving the man's face. Giran. Dabi greeted the man from his face. Dabi greeted the man from his side, extending his hand for a handshake. The man gratefully took it, looking at Izuku. His hand still extended. Pleasure to meet you, Yami. I've heard about you quite a bit. Hard not to when so many villains disappear because of you. Izuku stared at his hand, deciding to take it. The handshake was firm and surprisingly soft. Izuku was used to people being rough with him, especially people from the villain world, so that was a first. Is this like a try to put me down? Because if so, Dabi, I want my $10 back right now. I'm not stepping into a grave knowing my $10 are lost to a burnt pole. Jiren didn't need to know he couldn't step into a grave to stay there, so he let Dabi slide, only briefly flicked his gaze at his friend who stepped aside to give them somewhat privacy. How thoughtful. I said, trust me, goddammit. He gritted out, though no malice as he heard his voice. Don't think of me so low, Yami. I'm only here to pass on information. Jiren chuckled as Izuku, near a long crate, jumped as he's sitting down, his feet hurt. Shoot. There's a job. Yeah, no, I gathered that much. Dabi snorted a cough. Dabi coughed from his place, leaning against the wall. Izuku shot him a look. I think you understand that people want information. Izuku hummed. Of course people only came to him for information, nothing else. Some were naive, thinking that they could beat it out of him, but what they didn't realize was that he was very powerful and with what he knew in many people. He could do many things for him, but he worked only for the right people, for the right pay. Something in the back of his mind told him that he was getting tangled in something big, but he ignored that part, shuffling in his spot, crossing his legs. What really depends here is the customer sending an outside source to ask me? He flicked his gaze to Jiren, who tilted his head, and his smile only briefly dropping. Because when either they're scared I know them and will end their career on the spot, say, he wiggled a single finger in the air. 2, they want information I most likely could get killed for, and they don't want to be associated because of the danger. He raised 2 more. And 3, it's information on something or someone I will give no information about. He raised the 4th one, keeping his thumb down. Or 4, it's a trap to kill me. He'd gone through all the 4 of these. He knew how people worked, and he never liked it. He held his hand long in the air for Giran to chuckle. I've heard rumors, but your analysis is incredible. Jiren whistled, the sound echoing through the warehouse much more than it should. Izuku narrowed his eyes, flicked his gaze at Dabi, who had straightened up and was barely leaning against the wall. He looked alert as well. It's not much of an analyzing, but reading the room. Fascinating. Giran hummed. It was far too nonchalant for Izuku's taste. So which one is it? Izuku wants this over with as fast as he could. I believe it may fall somewhere in between 2 and 3. That wasn't great, fantastic, and expected. Yeah, right. There's never an in-between, or at least not in the villain world. Either live, you either live or get killed. That was that. Although Izuku was expecting the in-between, he just denied it existed. A bit hypocritical from his side, but those expecting didn't exist if people didn't know about them. And he didn't let his customers have the freedom of knowing that. It was information that could be easily used against them. He already let himself slip up once, one time that cost him much more than he'd ever imagined. I've also heard around that you see yourself as a villain, although Vigilante fits you better. Girin kept stepping on his toes. Izuku clicked his tongue at that. He dislikes it when people try to question his doing and beliefs. He sounds like Stain just now, and Izuku noted that he should stop reading into the hero killer. The next thing he would do was believe All Might, and All Might was great, and he'd rather not. Vigilante, villain, or hero for that matter, it's an obscure term. The name Vigilante was born only because some heroes broke the rules and some villains made friends. He hissed. He hated the terminology that tried to push attention into titles to justify them, or the opposition to make them dire than they actually were. So you think you're a villain because you're making friends? Girin raised his eyebrow. I'm a villain only because I have no desire to be a hero. Dabi was by his side at this point, but his step faltered at what he said. He never had expressed his opinion on being a hero in front of other people, so they were left guessing on perhaps he was just trying to chase a dead dream with the stuff he did. And partially they were right, but only the fact that it was a dead dream. He wasn't chasing it or anything, not anymore. That is, he gave up on trying to be something he would never be, and just accepted that life as a villain was what he could live. Even if people seemed to disagree with him, but he never was the one to listen to others' opinions. Then why do you stick with the term vigilante? I'm sure it will lessen your prison years by a few when you get caught. Girin chuckled. And yeah, he had a point. Police were more lenient with vigilantes because they were more pseudo-heroes, and if one learned history, like actually learned to digging stuff from before the rise of heroes, they would realize that the heroes they knew today used to be vigilantes. The saviors of the world, but once made legal with restriction, though many glanced over all the damage they truly did. Those were simply side effects of being a hero. If I get caught, plus if I said I was a vigilante, it would imply I had desire to be a hero, which I don't. So, where do we go from that? Jiren laughed. Izuku tried to relax. He really did, but he couldn't. You amuse me, kid. I'm glad I could make you laugh. Dabi clicked his tongue. Izuku watched Jiren calm down and looked at him with a glint in his eyes. You have 3 days to either accept or deny it. You have 3 days to either accept this job or deny it. I cannot give you much information unless you accept. I hope you understand, kid. Izuku sighed and he nodded. Same place? He asked, watching as Jiren simply smiled and bowed, retreating into the shadow. Izuku crossed his legs with his position on the crate, letting Dabi let out a long groan following the quiet apology. What would he do? He sighed, hopping off and catching Dabi's attention. What are you going to do? Dabi watched Izuku pull out his notes, scribbling everything down. A new page, a new person. Going to stalk Jiren a little bit. He smiled. You're stupid. Thanks. He grinned at his at his friends. He ruffled his hair, pushing his hoodie down. Pushing his hoodie down. Would this talking cost him something? Possibly, but he needed to know about the man, and if he's not, even if nothing came up, information never hurt. The nagging feeling never disappeared. Well, that's the end of chapter 4. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry again for stuttering and everything, but you know, it is how it is. It's gonna get better over time, obviously. But for now, you all have to deal with it if you listen to me. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful night, day, morning, afternoon, evening, whenever it is in the world for you. And make sure to hydrate, tons. Love you. Bye.